get the depressing one out of the way.
Yeah, I mean the depressing one, like they're not all depressing. So amazingly, COVID emergency is over in 8 days, I think, which will dry up all federal funds, kicks 13 to 15 million people off Medicaid. We've already done away with all OSHA protections. There's no mask requirements. And I guess New York Times, right on cue, is just saying, heck of a job to the Biden administration. They're rolling back a vast assertion of government power that helped bring an end to the worst public health threat in 100 years.
Yeah, and so now COVID is no longer politically charged. Both sides agree that there's nothing to worry about as we sit here.
The Koch brothers and the Brownstone Institute won. Good job, everybody.
Yeah, they did. They really did.
They really did. In spite of that, a commission says that the COVID response exposed collective national incompetence, which is certainly true.
It's clearly bipartisan.
Speaking of incompetence, it really is. And, it's interesting how everybody who opines on this subject can take glimmers of the truth and steer it into their own point of view. The latest one is our Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, who wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about how loneliness is affecting all of us and is as dangerous as smoking. Given the extraordinary costs of loneliness to individual and societal health, rebuilding social connection must be a top national public health priority. The good news is each of us can play a powerful role in creating more connected lives and communities. I will say that in this piece, he does give a fleeting nod to economic disparity and our health insurance industry system. But because here we go, he's toeing the line for this administration and the Trump administration. The widespread social disconnection presents profound threats to our health and well-being. In fact, lacking connection can increase the risk for premature death to levels comparable to smoking daily. There is a strong link between loneliness and isolation and many of the other health issues that we face today, including heart disease and stroke. Interesting.
Yeah, and all this is, we understand it's ultimately a justification to say for the better health of the country, you have psychological damage, you have learning loss, things that they've shown are not really even happening in bigger numbers. In some ways, suicides were down during the pandemic.
When schools were closed, they were down.
Yeah. So this myth of, people can't go to school, so kids are killing themselves.
Right.
Absolute garbage. Now, you notice he doesn't ever compare COVID to isolation, to loneliness.
No. Or 10 million children being orphaned across the world, over 1 million people in our country, and what that does to communities every time somebody who's part of your community, a family, a loved one, friend, teacher, anybody dies. Like that has rippling effects on all of our mental health. But they will use this to tell everybody to get out into the community, go back to work, go back to school.
And if let's just take him at his face value, he means well here, right? Loneliness, he wants to stop loneliness. Well, the way to get people out in the public and interacting with others could be, hey, let's have a massive mask campaign. Let's say it's okay to return to normalcy with a mask even, which, I don't necessarily agree with that, but like, at least that's a step towards protecting the public. It's a step further than we're doing now.
Right. But if you keep pushing the line that it's just as dangerous to get COVID as it is to not interact with people, but then you don't deal with any of the systemic problems, as you said, masking, we could have an enormous concerted effort across the nation to have filtered air in every public space. It wouldn't even be that expensive. But I really think at this point, everyone in the government is worried about ever doing a single thing to help the public good, because then we know it's possible.
I think that's it. That's why they'll fight tooth and nail for the most small positive change that could happen to us.
Yeah, which is
that's
get
why
back out there.
the railroad work strike was everything. They had to stop that at all costs, or other industries could protest, and
Yep.
it would be an example of actually shutting down the economy in a big way.
Yeah. And now, okay, so we saw that the CDC had some big convention. They didn't take COVID precautions, and now 35 people test positive following that conference, which is really undermining any belief that the CDC ever was following the science on any level. This one also is just confounding. And for anybody who is at all skeptical about the vaccines or the profit motive behind the FDA and the CDC working in tandem with Big Pharma, now they're saying that one dose is enough for mRNA COVID vaccines. However, there is literally no data on how well a single dose of a bivalent mRNA vaccine will protect anyone. We have known for over 2 years that a single dose of the original vaccines was not good enough. The human immune system has not suddenly changed. And right now, what they're doing with this is undermining everything they said before. Nobody who hasn't already gotten vaccinated and boosted is all of a sudden going to be like, oh, okay, well, this makes me feel good. All it makes everyone feel like is that the science behind this is completely arbitrary and is tainted by profit motives for what, and I don't even know why they're doing that. Is it just to like get rid of the bivalent boosters that they procured? I mean, what is happening? Why would they even do that?
I really don't know, other than they want COVID to be over. They don't want it to be a political issue. And, both parties' donors benefit from COVID being pretend over. And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't even know where to go.
I mean, it's just depressing because they really have undermined. I mean, I think so often about that lesser evil argument and Biden coming into office, killing the Black Lives Matter movement, killing the Me Too movement, killing the belief science. It's like,
well, it's the Biden administration, the tail wagging the dog. It's just like they do with the war. It's like they've convinced enough people in the public that this is they don't want it to be a bipartisan issue. They don't want either side to go to war with each other over science. So they're collectively going to both ignore the science, and the public has been so brainwashed, and they, even the ones that aren't, like, I know lots of friends and allies, even on the left in Twitter space, that are just giving up. They're like, I can't do anything about it. And which you're really saying, I want to die earlier. I mean, like, I want people to die earlier. I want kids to get disabling disease by like letting this stuff go now, because we know so much about it now. And to just ignore it all is just driving me insane.
It's driving me insane too. And yet I really understand that with no light at the end of the tunnel, because right now there is none, right? We're not going to go back to masks. They've taken away everything, all the protections. Nobody cares if you've gotten vaccinated or not anymore. We were talking about this earlier, but at the beginning when we were all getting vaccinated, and I was like making sure that I had copies of our CDC card and my kids' copies and sending it to them to school. Like, that's all done. Nobody cares. We're not cleaning the air. We're doing nothing. We're just pretending it's all over. And I think what happens with that kind of cognitive dissonance, if you understand what's happening, which I think all of us do, it's so upsetting. And then you decide, like, you have to decide, well, what kind of life do I want to live? And again, like, I'm really lucky. I work from home. and my kids are old enough that they can mask in public and I don't have to worry about them. If I had to go to work every day and everybody around me were getting sick and I had no choice, I just don't know. You should not have to work this hard during a global pandemic with absolutely no public health infrastructure in your country. It is a
Systemic.
I want to say Sisyphus, but like the adjective. Rolling that rock up, and you're just always going to lose because you're one person in the middle of a global pandemic. So again, we mask everywhere. I don't go anywhere unmasked, but
no, I understand why people give up hope in this area, and they think, well, even if there's two kinds of logic. Everyone's going to get COVID, and they don't think there's no message from the news that, well, multiple instances of COVID are really bad for you. I think if that one message got to people,
I think
at least
so too.
the people, at least a lot of people would go, oh shit, well, if the science really does say, maybe I was lucky the first time, but two bouts of COVID is really bad for me, you might see some change. But too many people in the public think, it's not going to be more severe. It doesn't increase my risks of anything. It's just, I had it. I wasn't so severe. I guess I have the genes that will beat COVID,
I get that a lot when I say I'm really trying to avoid COVID, and people say to me well, you've probably already had it. I'm like, okay, maybe I have. That could really be. I don't want to get it a second time. I don't want to. If I have gotten it, I wasn't aware of it because I haven't been sick in 3 years. So I don't want to spread it to somebody. Remember that whole you're I was going to say anaphylactic. Asymptomatic. Yeah, all of those ideas have just gone out the window. Caring for anybody else has gone out the window. So
this is the chart that people need to really see and understand. All these risks exponentially go up the second time, and then the third time, and then eventually, here's the chart for long COVID. So, they're saying even the World Health Organization, who is notoriously undermining, undercounting, downplaying the risks of COVID, when they admit that 1 in 10 people, and scientists,
not 1 in 10 people.
Exposures,
1 in 10 infections, which means if everyone's being expected to get it 2 to 3 times a year, which is kind of what they're doing right now, right? So it's not 1 in 10 people. It's 1 in 10 infections will lead to a possibility of needing long-term care. Right. Sorry. I just want to I think that's an important distinction.
It is. And the other part that I was getting to is that this is the low number. This is the number that is calculated to put out a things aren't so bad message from the WHO relative to the real numbers. But
they're not trying to create mass hysteria. They're trying to give
and
it's
WHO has been an undercounter this whole time. So look at this right here. This is the chart right here.
How long until I get long COVID?
Basically,
you need your
100% chance. I do need my readers. Anyway, it's really awful, and these are the risks. These are the risks here that come with it. Don't get it. And look, South Korea finally had a study.
Yeah. So this, I think, is really, of course, we all knew that children were vectors, but, there's been this huge thing of that with the COVID minimizing crowd, which now includes everyone on the right and liberal left, that children should always have been going back to school and that lockdowns were horrible. I don't know where you are, but we didn't really have much of a lockdown we had a couple months in California, but it wasn't a hardcore lockdown. They're acting like 2 years of lockdowns. It was a few months. But anyway, all of those purple circles, I know it's hard to read this chart. This is a study done in South Korea to show that to show the chain of transmission of severe acute, just as a reminder what SARS-CoV actually stands for. Severe is the first S, severe acute respiratory syndrome. It's daycare, it was a taekwondo studio, it was a language and mathematics academy, like a tutoring center, and childcare places. So those are the four sort of larger purple circles that you see. Then you see all the different children who went there. Then you see them go home. And then beyond those home, then all the people that they were home with go out and spread it to other places. So, I mean, you know, again, like at the beginning of COVID, when Trump was in power and everybody hated him, rightfully so, the mainstream media loved pointing out all the different, you know, first of all, there was the death ticker across the bottom. And we would talk about asymptomatic spread. And you might not know that you're contagious, but you could be. And so you wear a mask to protect people. And children in that very first wave of COVID seemed not to be having the severe effects manifested. I mean, who knows what the long-term results will be, but they were still possibly able to spread it. And now they're showing that, yes, in fact, that once those lockdowns let up a little bit, those kids would then go into their community, go home, and the people at home would go into their communities. And of course they were vectors for mass spreading of COVID.
And none of this is a shock, is the thing. Like, none of it. All of this is predicted by the scientists that study airborne diseases. And we knew they knew it was an airborne disease. They frickin' won.
Yeah.
I mean, basically.
Follow the science.
So yeah, I mean, but for hospitals to be unmasking of all places is to me the most clear-cut case of something you can point to and say, how the fuck does this make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I think from now on, just like they have to wash their hands every time they walk into a room, everybody in a hospital should be masked. Why would we not do that now? What's the point? To see your smile? I'd way rather not see a smile and also not get an infection.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to a lot of people, they're like, it's not the plague anymore. Okay, well, you're still going to get it multiple times. You still want to be able to go to a hospital and not possibly kill somebody who can't beat off the plague, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's a low plague or, you know, some sort of minimal thing. You still don't want kids to get something that we know harms them on some level.
Yeah.
Even if it's not having acute effects now, we know that, you know, 1 in 10 chance of long COVID, which is disabling. It's shrinking the brains of people.
Hardening your arteries. Yeah.
Clotting all your organs, blood clots in all your organs.
Yeah.
Why, like, once you lose hospitals, you lose everything. You're just saying, fuck it. Because where do you want people with COVID to go?
Well, they say if you're sick, don't come to the hospital.
Yeah, that's the latest. You get to hospitals.
Yeah, if you're feeling sick, stay home.
Don't wear a mask. We're not wearing masks at the hospital, so don't come give us COVID.
And again, airborne. So even if they're like, oh, well, in the cancer wards, we're going to mask, but it's airborne. That idea that we could be 6 feet away from each other and it would be fine. Like, again, another thing that follow the science, we know that's not true. So to think that you can check into the hospital, walk through the halls, go to the cancer, like, it is really unfathomable that the people who are supposed to protect us and do no harm are mask off now.
Exactly. And they have, you know, they have all these campaigns started and they're pushing this narrative of wanting to see the smile of the doctor. And, you know, it's important to connect with your doctor and your patient and see their faces and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? Plastic, we've made clear plastic for 50 years now.
Yep.
There are masks that you can buy that fully show your entire facial expression. So that argument is horseshit.
Yep.
It's people that don't want to wear a mask. It's as they're pushing this whole thing. But like,
it's crazy.
For doctors to be so uninformed to be on board with this it shows the peak gaslighting that the Biden administration has been able to pull off. That doctors are like, I don't want to wear a mask.
They accomplished what Trump could only dream of, honestly.